We want to thank you, all of you, for coming out in these elements to be here today as we deal with a very difficult issue, the issue of police brutality, and the release of footage by a Good Samaritan, a bystander, who captured two members of the Mesa Police Department viciously, brutally, and with the most sort of animalistic behavior imaginable, attacking this man, Jason Michael Barton, for allegedly jaywalking on a major street here in the city of Mesa. We have learned after talking with Jason and some of the witnesses from the incident that in fact he wasn't jaywalking. In just a moment, we'll have him explain a little bit about what was going on with the light at that particular intersection. But we're thankful that Mr. Jimenez, Jonathan Jimenez, the Good Samaritan, was able to capture the video footage of these law enforcement officers, frankly, beating Mr. Barton in a way that's reminiscent of Rodney King in Los Angeles. And so as a result of that, that profiling, that abusive policing, that criminal act that needs to be investigated, and those officers should face assault charges for what they did. We will be holding a massive civil rights rally here in Mesa at the police headquarters on tomorrow, July 6th, Thursday, at 7 p.m. We are encouraging everyone who comes out. People are very angry about the beating that he went through. They're extremely angry, and it's a critical time for our community. We're encouraging everyone to remain nonviolent, even counter-protesters and law enforcement that may be out here for our protection, for everyone's protection. We're just encouraging people to remain nonviolent, which has been a very difficult task, I must tell you, from Monday night when I flew in from San Francisco and found out about this situation because of the 47 voicemails that I had. People are very upset and agitated over this, and it's going to be a yeoman's job keeping the peace in the midst of that protest. So we're just praying that everything remains peaceful with respect to the demonstrations. But as far as traffic goes and business as usual in Mesa, that will cease to be a peaceful daily happening. We're embarking on what I think is an ambitious plan to cause gridlock and shut down major arterial streets in the city. Because they chose to beat Jason for jaywalking, we are bringing in hundreds of black people to jaywalk in the city of Mesa. And we're going to start tomorrow night on Country Club on Main through parts of downtown. And then continuing through the week, we'll have some daytime, nighttime alternating protests to see if they have a one-size-fits-all policy where they just beat any black person who's jaywalking or looks like they might want to jaywalk. I think it goes without saying that the family, this is Tina Barton, Jason's mother, expects, as does the wider community, the mayor and the city council here in Mesa, the chief of police, the interim chief, who's been described to me as a good old boy by a lot of people with problems in this community, to immediately fire these officers. Clearly, the behavior they engaged in was in violation of their policies and procedures. The big advice to black men in particular is to comply in those situations. And it's my opinion, and the opinion of, I think, many people in our community, that Mr. Barton did comply. But when someone is rushing at you to beat the living hell out of you on the street and you haven't committed a crime, it's certainly natural to turn away from that kind of brute force and just, all out gang jumping that he experienced at the hands of these two officers. We see in the video him being repeatedly punched in the head, kicked in the stomach and in the back. He was kicked so hard in the back that he urinated on himself when he was being beaten. They held his head between their legs and twisted it almost to the point he said of breaking it. He has several doctors that he's seeing right now to determine the extent of the injuries that he did receive. There's cuts all over his body still and bruises all over the rest of his body. He's in bad shape behind this. And we're in bad shape as a community behind this. When you look at that video, it's a black and white, classic textbook case of police brutality and excessive force. There's just no other way to describe it. And the thought that these officers are still on patrol or still employed by this police department puts fear and terror in the hearts and minds of black people in this community and the rest of the valley that have to come through this area. It was a classic Southern beating, and thank God, because so often we don't have videotape of this. Thank God somebody had the guts and the train of mind, the mindset to capture what could have been a very fatal, a fatal encounter, but was certainly a highly abusive encounter. So with that, and we can talk more about the protests in just a minute, I would like you to hear from Tina Barton, Jason Michael Barton's mother.
Hi. First and foremost, I'd like to thank God my son Jason is alive. Thank God. Justice for Jason. Jason asked, what did he do? And the officer said, jaywalking. Jason was jaywalking. And my first question to the officer is, if that was your son, your daughter, your mother, your father, your best friend, black, white, yellow, brown, would you beat them the way you beat my son? My son has endured police brutality since the age of 14. I seen him rise and fall. He was a track star. And I was a young mother. I didn't know who to go to before when this was happening. And now all of a sudden with the Mesa Police Department, I hope it brings closure to the brutality that my son had received over the years. And when he was stopped before, it was over your son stole a car radio. He was 14. What was he going to do with a car radio? Okay, and this one, jaywalking. When is the violence going to stop? Jaywalking? And if it wasn't for Jonathan Jimenez recording, I thank you, Jonathan, for recording it, because it would have been my son's word against the police officers over a minor jaywalking.
I would add that they had a prior incident with Mesa Police that we're going to be sharing at the rally tomorrow night. But to give you a synopsis, he was mistakenly identified for a short, bald, black suspect that robbed a
mobile gas
station.
And to correct that was in Chandler.
Yeah, in Chandler. And they brought guns to their home and raised guns against their mother and him. We're going to share that because it just shows a pattern, not necessarily with the Mesa Police Department, but with law enforcement in general, where profiling takes place even when the suspect doesn't match the description that's given by the people who are allegedly victimized. Joining us on tomorrow night at 7 will also be a woman by the name of Ava Alexander, who was brutalized by the Mesa Police Department, and about 13 other people who are coming forward with video footage or recordings. They're all African American, of them being abused and having their civil rights violated by members of the Mesa Police Department. So next we'll have just a few words from Jason, and we'll try to take some questions if we can.
Man of many words and man of few words as well. In the light of all this, like they said, this is not the first time, this is not the second time, it's not the third time, it's not the fourth time, it's not the fifth time. We can count into the 20s that I've been in handcuffs just for the most tedious of things. And it's not to the fact that it's the handcuffs, it's just to the fact that the vibration they give when you're not a criminal, when you're not doing anything. Being stereotyped, being brutalized the way I've been over the years, it's a way to make a person go from being one of the most happiest people on this planet to trying to really create a new murderer. And that's what they're doing. And we need to stop this because we're destroying families, we're destroying relationships, we're destroying people's jobs so the police department can feed their kids and take off our kids' plates. I have a child. You know what I'm saying? I have two of them. Okay? My dad's dead from the same stuff. I do good things. I stay out of trouble because I got to be an example for my son. But the example to give my son is that I'm a criminal just to trump up charges, just to make me look like some kind of criminal figure on the internet, technology. Nothing but dirty mugshots when I got a lot of pictures up there doing positive things. These things get out. People see them. I had a friend look me up one day and say, Jason, what are you doing out there? You know, only thing she seen when she looked up my name on the internet was mugshots, 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 mugshots. But no explanation. It's my word against the judge and the cops, everything. Every time I'm arrested, it's my word against the judge. And then it's a laughable matter every time they put a foot in the hand on me. Like, ha 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 ha. Every time I'm arrested, and then to be told by Phoenix police, fuck my kids.
Jason, take us back to June 19th and describe what happened. What were you doing and what happened?
I was on the phone texting my friend about the good times we should be having as brothers because we had put an album together called Symbolic Nature that you could find on Machiavelli Records 666.bandcamp.com, where we got together and we, you know, just did something for the good. And then I look up and here comes a car turning around the corner and the cops with the look of, I've had enemies who want to beat me up because I talk a lot of mess. Don't keep my mouth shut. So I could tell when there's eyes that's ready to attack and they're in attack mode. It's predetermined already. You know, I know I wasn't walking across the light because about 2 months earlier, something happened where I'm more careful about, you know, because I was in the right anyways. But when you're walking across a rail line where people get hit by the train because it's silent, you kind of look and make sure that the light is flashing. And what happens is when you walk onto the light and you don't hit the walk sign at the rail train, it goes from the walk sign automatically to the blinking hand within a second. So I seen that, and by the time I looked up at the clock, the little watch, because I'm in the numbers and things like that, it said 12. And so when they pulled up on me and said I was jaywalking, I was saying I wasn't jaywalking, and I said because the light turned quick, the hand signal turned quick, so I was in the why it was blinking, which many people do when they want to get across the street.
Just do this on here.
And so what happens is, while I'm on the phone, I'm sitting here trying to turn it back from the text messages to get on the camera, and by the time I look up, I'm being attacked and then told that I was jaywalking. I'm jaywalking. I'm like, I'm not doing nothing. So while they're attacking me, one's pulling, as you can see the scars, one's pulling my hand this way and one's pulling my hand this way saying I'm resisting arrest. And they do that so often that I'm glad that Jonathan had got that on camera, because that happens to a lot of us African American women and black men over time.
So
you
you're
know.
saying that you looked up, the crosswalk said you had 12 seconds to cross the street, so you had the right of way.
Mm-hmm.
You're crossing the street and looking at your phone at the same time?
Nope. Because when I cross the street, I got the phone down.
So you're crossing the street, and then
'Cause
how far into the intersection did you get before the cop?
He
No,
was
I was
completely clear of the intersection.
I was clear of the intersection. I was probably maybe what was funny about it was I was maybe a minute off the intersection, and I didn't see no cars when I looked up, going towards the north, no, south, going towards the south direction. And so next thing you know, I seen a car, but I wasn't paying attention, turn the corner, and then they roll up on me, and they're like, "What? Stop right there!" And then I asked them, "What are you pulling me over for?" And they go jaywalking, and I could see so I turned around so I could turn turn the camera on, and by the time I look up, his partner is halfway out of the car, charging at me. So my only instinct is to move out of the way, and then they tackle me. One grabs my hand this way, the other one grabs my hand this way, and telling me to stop resisting arrest.
And I would add this, as we analyze this serious criminal matter. The punishment for jaywalking is not a Jim Crow butt kicking on the street. There's no explanation for their behavior. And the witnesses who were there, including Jonathan and others who will be at the rally, all said that by the time the police did their U-turn and doubled back to the intersection, he had cleared the intersection in the crosswalk, mind you. I thought jaywalking was done out of a crosswalk, but he had completed crossing the street, and as he said, was well on his way to where he was going. Let me just add this. Jason works a job, takes care of his family, doesn't do any illegal drugs, doesn't commit crimes, is educated. And that night he was leaving his friend's apartment. He has a friend who's a paraplegic in a wheelchair. He's the short man, as Jason says, and Jason is the tall man, as his friend says. So he changes light bulbs and air conditioning filters and that sort of thing. So you've got someone who was out doing an act of kindness for somebody else who's just trying to get home from doing that, and gets beaten by these police like a runaway slave in the midst of modern day slave catchers. There's no other way to explain it.
I just have a question though. Did you hear them? Did they give you any commands, or did they say anything?
Have you seen the video?
I have. I'm asking Jason to retell what happened.
Okay, well, he's not going to answer every question, but I think clearly if you've seen the video, because the question is sort of on his face, they get out of the car screaming, "You're jaywalking, you're jaywalking." That's what the witnesses heard. That's what he heard. That's what I heard when I saw the tape. And they rushed him like an offensive lineman.
Reverend, they're going to say he didn't comply, though. So your response to that is, again...
How did he not comply? He wasn't going anywhere. They didn't have to chase him down. Did anybody see a foot chase?
Well, we haven't seen the whole video. We don't know all the context.
Right.
We don't know all the context. So can you...
I encourage you to check the body camera, too.
So,
Right.
Reverend, the question remains, Jason, did the police give you any kind of commands? What did they tell you?
Yeah, that was resisting arrest and giving me commands with their fists and knees.
Can you repeat those commands? What did they tell you more than...
You're lucky you're alive and not dead.
So they get out of the car, and you said you turned around to turn your camera on to try to protect yourself, to try to document what was happening. But do you think maybe when you turned around,
Nope.
that's when they thought
I don't
that-
think nothing.
Okay, well tell
They
us.
got out the car,
Yeah.
ready to whoop some ass. And that's it. They didn't give me no commands or nothing.
Yeah, there's no narrative that's going to fly here that the cell phone was a gun or a knife or something like that. I mean, if they want to try that, they can, but there was too many people watching.
Jason, since you've been through this before, according to what you're telling us, did you think about just putting your hands up and...
Just putting my hands up. I could have. Right now, I'm surprised I'm not getting arrested for talking.
Let me address that. Just putting his hands up, that's the most insulting thing I've heard all day. And that's not a shot at you, because you're asking an important question. But as a black American, just put my hands up. And I stressed earlier on Channel 10, I did a demonstration about shooting and not shooting and complying with the police. Compliance is important, right? Okay? Doing what you're asked to do is important. but they didn't ask him to do anything, and they attacked him. You can't attack someone and expect compliance after you've already attacked them with excessive force and frankly bullying and brutal behavior. So no, in light of everything that's happened, black men particularly are not going to just put their hands up and freeze. He was a law-abiding United States citizen with the full protection of the Constitution and the laws of Arizona, and none of them permit the police to do what they did to him. So to put a requirement on black people to just put your hands up and freeze, no, that's something from apartheid South Africa. That's something that died with the Civil Rights Act. That doesn't have to happen. We don't have to do that anymore. But that's the mindset of law enforcement, which is why, and I'm giving this disclaimer today, they're making it harder and harder for me to require of my people nonviolence. There are people who want to hurt law enforcement because of what they saw in that video, and I sympathize with that. But my better nature and my morality doesn't endorse that. But the law enforcement is making it extremely difficult for me to exercise any sort of leadership over millennials, younger black Americans who are saying that they're sick and tired of being sick and tired of having to feel like they've got to put their hands up. I mean, it's totally bizarre. Totally bizarre that we would require that of people who are not in violation of any law.
That said, Reverend Jason, just to clarify, did the officers ask you to put your hands up or to freeze or to stand still?
No.
Take us to that moment. There's two men attacking you. Where were they hitting you? What was going through your mind? It's obviously 2 against 1.
No, it's
It's a
2
whole-
on 1. There's a difference. It's 2 on 1.
It's 2 on 1. You're on the bottom of the pile. What's going through your mind? Where do you remember the hits going to your body?
This again, what did I do? Why me? And they're about to get away with it again if nobody's recording it, and it's going to be my word against the whole state and city of Mesa when it comes to the judge, because they're all working with each other.
Do you remember?
And they're going to kill me
Do you remember
while they
the
were
hits,
snapping
the
my
pain?
neck. Yeah.
Describe that. Where were you hit?
Everywhere that they could. They even tried to pull out my hair because they just had the right to do that because they got a badge and things like that. So they was trying to pull out my hair. I guess they was mad at the dreads. The dreads did something too, so that's the mentality they had. Just everything that you would think that a slave master would send a cop to do if they want to attack a black man. That's how I felt. Like they was like, oh, we can get away with it, we could do whatever. And then to sit back and when I say, I need some water because y'all dehydrated me, and then tell me at least you're lucky you're alive, is pretty much indication of when I was thinking they're trying to kill me for jaywalking.
How did it end? Was there blood? How bad?
Yeah, blood, piss, shoulders, is not the same. Bruises,
cuts.
on my nose. I got a new birthmark, a memory, all that type of stuff. It's just,
Did you fight back, Jason?
no, I didn't. I didn't have the chance to. Their tactics come out of somewhere, come out of like an army type of training, just some army, some reject army tactic moves, it was uncalled for. And the reason they stopped me is because I'm a black man walking.
No, but at what point, why did they stop beating you?
Because they got caught.
They got caught. That's why.
Witnesses were
They
asking
didn't
them
stop
what they were
beating
doing.
me. Yeah, they didn't until they turned around and seen the witnesses say, "What are you doing?" And then a whole bunch of other cops started coming. That's when they stopped. Because if nobody would have asked anything, they probably would have been beating me, and then more would have came and just tried to get their licks in.
Let me stop you there before we forget it. After beating him the way they did, I mean, I don't know about the members of the media, but if somebody beat me like that, I'd like to see a doctor. They took him straight to jail, and he received no medical attention whatsoever until after he met with his attorney and was able to get some direction for medical care immediately after coming from jail. So they beat him and then they jailed him. That's not right. You don't beat people like that and jail them. There are people who get medical attention for scraped knees in the midst of an arrest, and they beat him like a rented mule, you know, and didn't give him any sort of medical attention. And I've got to applaud him today, because there's a psychic cost to this type of physical racism. And he's in the midst of the post-traumatic stress from that. I know the fear is real in the hearts of a lot of black citizens, and for him to have actually experienced that and be able to stand here today and be as coherent as he is and as passionate as he is, I really admire that, because, you know, he's a living martyr. He could have been like Eric Garner. If they would have just kept choking him and hitting him and kicking him, break his neck, he could be dead, and we'd be out here talking about a murder. But we've got a survivor, and we have videotape, and that changes the whole ball game here, especially in the local jurisdictions.
And I want to put something out there too. For a man that was jaywalking, you know, let's say on the way or inside the jail, you know, I ended up succumbing to the tragedy that I went through. When you get in there, everybody has cell phones. There was no way for me to get in touch with my mama. There was no way to get in touch with the mother of my son. And while I'm sitting in there, they just, because it's their word against mine, and they could do whatever they want once they got you in handcuffs. I'm sitting in there and I'm like, what if I just pass away in here for the butt whooping they gave me because my internals or something or whatever's going on in there inside, and nobody would have known what was going on. Nobody would have known that I was in there dead.
They didn't read him his Miranda rights after that beating. You know, they violated his civil rights left and right in every imaginable way, short of ending his life. And that's why we're protesting tomorrow night, and why we're going to change the demographics of Mesa over the next few weeks,
For the rest of its being.
as we attempt to make them adhere to their own policies and procedures, and challenge this community about whether its values or the values of those renegade beaters on their police force, or whether or not they are still the values of the Mormon pioneers who established this community. There's no room in our society or in Christendom or in life in general to justify what they did to him. It's a decency issue.
And to further on that, I'm not a man of coincidence. I'm a man of like people really, devising schemes to cover the wrong that they do. But every time, a black man or a black woman is targeted like they are, and it's kind of like the COINTELPRO, if we go and look that up and do our research, that's the targeting that I've been getting. And when they do this, every time they do it, they're always implementing a plan of why they're doing it a month prior to it, every time. And this time it's, what they were practicing, the cutting down on jaywalking because of the people getting hit.
Yeah.
They said that, like, okay, they started it in May. That's got to stop too. Every time they put their hands on a black man, a black woman, a month prior to that, they just implemented something that they were getting ready to do, cutting down or whatever, but it ends up having to do with somebody getting beat up first before they let the community know that's what they were doing.
Are you familiar with the intersection? Can we say it's a place that you frequent?
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a car?
No, I don't drive a car because if you have it registered in your name, they know that it's you.
And what are your specific demands, Reverend, for tomorrow? What actions?
Well, we're demanding that the officers be immediately fired, and that the city of Mesa clearly has a conflict of interest and should not be investigating this themselves. An outside law enforcement agency should be investigating. I think that Sheriff Pinzone, the chief law enforcement officer for this community, should take the helm of that investigation. He ought to want to. If you know, so we're going to ask for an independent investigation into that, and to continue the message to the interim chief. They've hired a new chief. I've got an invitation to meet with the new chief. Not really interested. Or meeting with the mayor or the council. Not interested. No town halls. No, round tables with the Negroes. This is an internal problem that they're having. They need to sit down with their law enforcement officers, show them the videotape of this man being beaten, and make sure that it's drummed into their thick skulls that that is not the way that you treat anybody whose job it is that you're to protect and serve when you allegedly think that they might have jaywalked. Let's keep it in the perspective that they set. They accused this man of allegedly jaywalking, and they did a number on him like a criminal street gang. The worst gang and the worst violence in our community is coming from members of local police departments.
Jason, just to be clear, you were in the crosswalk.
Yes, in the crosswalk. In the crosswalk. In the crosswalk. In the crosswalk.
And you had already crossed the street by the time they pulled
I
you.
was about a minute and a half across the street.
Did you see them? Do you know if they saw you? Did you see them see you?
I don't think they see me. I don't think they see me because when I would cross the street, wasn't no cars coming this way. But there was cars going that way.
And I mean, let's just use the police's narrative again to marry it to this situation. You have a shortage of response times with law enforcement. You have Central Mesa, which is riddled with legitimate crime. You mean to tell me that two patrol officers who are already overstretched and a vital, critical resource to this community have time to do a U-turn and come harass a black man about possibly jaywalking? When we have rapists and meth addicts and all kinds of creeping, crawling criminals in the streets of this city, and serious calls, but you had time to make a U-turn and come back and harass him. I know why they did it. He's a big, tall, scary nigger. That's why they did it. With dreadlocks and dark skin and intimidating, that's what they found. They found one that was just what the doctor ordered. For them to be able to engage in that kind of hyped up, sick beating that they engaged in. These guys were very comfortable kicking his ass on the sidewalk. Didn't seem like was their first time. And I hope to God that it's their first and last time. But it's unacceptable. It's unacceptable. Part of me wishes he was white. Part of me wishes he was white. So maybe this entire community could understand. But they don't. That doesn't happen. Doesn't happen to white people. They don't get beat down for jaywalking. I mean, beat like whistling at a white woman Emmett Till beat.
This ain't nothing new.
It's not right.
It's not changed.
And I used the Rodney King analogy. Rodney King had drugs. Rodney King was committing a crime. He wasn't.
So, Reverend, have you had any response from the police department?
I don't think formally, no. We've had some calls into them. I expect them to put the same song and dance routine on probably after the protest, that the mayor's going to get his closest, black lapdogs together and figure out where we go from here. But that's not going to be enough this time. This is an internal problem with systemic and institutionalized racism within the Mesa Police Department. And the only way we're going to get by this is justice for Jason through the courts, but through real transparent, concrete reforms of this police department. And it starts with purging their ranks of officers who have violent or racist tendencies. That new chief can't get here fast enough. The interim chief is poisonous. And I hold that person responsible for this, along with those 2 officers.
Jason, and I'll try to phrase this as delicately as I can. Are there any cuts and bruises, as was mentioned, that you can show here comfortably without obviously intruding initiative in your shoulders? So.
His leg.
Shoulder is kind of healed now, but
Hands.
knees, cuts, nose, all up here when they, we're all bruised and can't.
We have some photographs from his examination too that we'll be releasing as well.
Jason, how does that make you feel when you show us your bruises and looking at it?
It don't make me feel nothing. Other than that, it's just when I see it, it's more of just what we've known to be happening. It's nothing has changed since slavery. It's just now being caught on camera. Technology is out there, and it's just being caught. Everybody's being exposed to what they're doing. If it wasn't for technology, a lot of these police would get away with what they're doing, and they're doing it with no remorse or anything. They're ready to attack, and it's already in their blood, and it's already written for these things to happen. But if it wasn't for technology, as I say, being here, they would be getting away with a lot of this, and that's pretty much why I think, well, I know that it's being put out the way it is, because the way they were whooping me up, I don't think they think anybody was recording, and that's how I felt like, oh, they're knowing they're going to get away with this, because when they stopped me kind of inside of 2 lights where it was dark. So you know how you have the street lights, and then you have the street lights that'll go down one right here, and then for a little bit while you're walking, it'll get a little bit dark because of the space between the lights. They timed it perfectly to where I was in that darkness.
And thank God for the Good Samaritan who filmed, and I believe they were quoted somewhere as saying that they knew something was wrong. They looked and they knew something was wrong. So they found courage, and recorded it. And I agree with that Good Samaritan. Not all of the police are bad. Yeah. 99% of them are just working their job, trying to feed their kids and protect us and keep people safe and keep our community safe. But this 1%, this terrible minority within law enforcement is ruining the reputation of the entire high calling.
As I've been encountered some cops, in Phoenix that had looked out for my interest. I was walking in places where, I shouldn't have been walking. They, asked me, promised them that I won't walk in that area because of the situations that go in there. I'm a person that walks with no fear. I should be able to do that. There are some good cops out there. I'm gonna put that out there. I've met a couple, that had, put their neck out there for me when they didn't have to, but it only takes an incident like this to put all of them in that one circle and be like, this is the whole thing, because even those cops should speak up.
And what was the intersection?
Extension in Maine.
And what street were you crossing Maine?
Maine.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Apache.
And this was at night?
Yeah.
About what time? 10. About what time?
About 10 o'clock.
10 o'clock. June 19th?
Yes.
Are there any additional questions? I'm melted here.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, of course, did you have to take time off of work?
Oh yeah, I had missed a lot of work and things like that. I missed a week of work, and If you wanted to call up there, my job is United Circ Sellers. If you wanted to go and look it up there, everybody up there will tell you
They're behind them 100%.
100%. Like even the supervisor, he said on the little Facebook update that he seen, that some lady seen, and he was just like, he comes to work every day. I go to work every day. Who likes to work? But I still show up every day, and that just because of jaywalking, I lost financial, and that's what has been has happened a lot, because I've been attacked at my jobs when I work at my jobs, and it's like every time I get a job, it's like, okay, he's making money, let's take it from him now, and that has to stop too. That type of harassment needs to stop. Like every time I get a job, it's like, okay, he's making money, let's take it from him.
And the protests are tomorrow night at 7 p.m. We'll be out here and getting started, and there will be civil disobedience. We intend to push the limits in Mesa tomorrow night.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.